Hey, help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also hit that like button to subscribe if you want more Cavs-focused content. Okay, I'm going to throw this on at the beginning of the video, but I just want you guys to know this was not the original intro, but this is the most recent information and good information that we have on the injury of James Harden. This is from Jeff Stotts, who's an athletic trainer, who says this. James Harden injury news. The thumb is made up of two phalanges. I'm not a doctor. Please forgive me if I mispronounce some medical terms here. Harden's break involves the distal phalanx, the tip of the thumb, and is non-displaced. This is the best case scenario for a quick return. Players suffer this injury and avoid surgery, miss an average players who suffer this injury and avoid surgery miss an average of 6.5 games, about 17 days. So Jeff seems to think this is a 3-week injury. Some people are saying it's a pain tolerance thing, that he can play through it. We'll see, but that's the best news that we have on it. You know, some people are saying this is best case scenario. Now we can get on to the rest of the video that I did record before all of this. I just wanted to make sure the most recent information I could add was at the beginning of the video where most people are watching. Another thing to add, this is not his shooting hand where the injury is. This is his non-dominant hand. Remember, James Harden is a left-handed player, so he hurt his right thumb. So not his shooting hand. Doesn't seem like it's the worst case scenario for the injury there too. You still use your offhand a lot when you're playing basketball, obviously, right? Like you dribble with both hands, you shoot with both hands, you finish with both hands. But it is something to note there that it's not his primary hand. I think it's a better way to use the term. But yeah, just wanted to add that in there too. All right, so we got some unfortunate news, and this is going to be kind of an opening to talk about one of the bigger issues with the Cavs, and it has nothing to do with the Cavaliers themselves, and it has everything to do with the referees who officiate them. And the reason I'm going to talk about that is because James Harden has popped up today with an injury. Now, the length of time this injury is expected to take him out, I've heard anything from 6 weeks to 4 weeks, but here's the reality of it, right? Whatever you Google when you put in James Harden's injury, it'll give you some kind of timeline. What we know right now is that James Harden isn't even technically out for today's game. He's still questionable for tonight's game. So we'll see. You know what I mean? I don't know how far to take it, right? A month to 6 weeks would be a blow for this team, but that would mean James would be back for the playoffs. In the short term, you're not really worried about the Cavs' ability to win games with or without James Harden. They should be good enough to win a significant chunk of their games going forward. So on one hand, you can say it's not that big of a deal. James will be back. On another hand, and I'm not using that as a pun, you could say to yourself, we're losing some valuable time for James to continue to build chemistry with the rest of the roster, which I do think is a thing, right? Like James is already at a disadvantage because he just joined this team a couple weeks ago. So losing more time would not be great. And also, you know, one of the things that you don't want to see with a player that's James Harden's age. And I know that James has a long history of playing consistently and not getting injured. But the reality is that James Harden is over 35 years old. I believe he's like 36 now. Let me double check that. But James Harden is not a young man. And the reality with James Harden not being a young man, he's 36 years old, is that injuries linger a little bit longer. No matter who you are, when you're 36, you can take care of your body the greatest and be one of the best of all time at it, and injuries linger longer when you're 30. There's no beating that science there, right? Everybody's body slows down as they get older, and where your body tends to slow down is the recovery process. So what that could mean is that, normally the timeline is 4 weeks, but maybe it's a little bit longer for James, or maybe he plays through the injury, but then that starts to have more effects on James. And then by the time we get to a game 7 in the playoffs, it starts to really negatively affect him, right? You don't want there to be a constant buildup of injury here for a player who's 35 plus. So that's something to keep an eye on going forward. Because again, it's not even guaranteed that James is going to miss time. It seems like, since this injury is being reported by national people, he's definitely going to miss time, but we'll see what ends up happening. But even if he doesn't miss time, there's still stuff to be concerned about. It's just the reality of a player being the age that James Harden is. It's just part of the game. But what I want to talk about is what caused this injury. Now, we don't know what specific play caused it, but what we do know is that James Harden got hacked a lot, and he did not go to the foul line yesterday versus the New York Knicks. There's that one egregious play that went viral on Twitter where it's an obvious foul, right? Like it's almost like such a foul that the ref should be able to look at that and just correct it and send them to the line, right? And they did not call it. People have noticed that James's free throw trips have reduced significantly since coming to Cleveland. Even when you try to pair it with his usage, it doesn't really line up with his usage. So he's going to the free throw line much less frequently than he did when he was with the Clippers. And if you've been a Cavs fan, we've had this discussion before so many times where it feels like the Cavaliers just aren't getting the benefit of the whistle. And look, I get it. Every team, every fan base feels like they don't get the benefit of the whistle, right? I remember Warriors fans used to think that they didn't get the benefit of the whistle. Hell, when LeBron was here, we didn't feel like we got the benefit of the whistle. But the teams who played against us would beg to differ that we got the benefit of the whistle. This is a much different situation here. I think there have been so many games, so many examples, so many times since like 2022 where the Cavs just don't get calls that other teams routinely get. And I think that is one of the most frustrating lines that the Cavs have had to deal with for a long time here, right? I remember when we used to blame this on JB because JB went hard at referees. Shout out to my guy, Cody Davis, who covers the Detroit Pistons now, who I'm going to have on the channel later this week. But I remember talking to him, and he was like, yeah, JB be talking crazy to these referees. And I used to think that it was JB's fault for why the Cavs don't get calls that they should get. And I don't know what's going on there in Detroit if they feel like they're getting all the calls that they should get. But I remember thinking it was JB's fault. But JB's left. Kenny Atkinson has a much different demeanor with referees for the most part. He's much calmer with the referees. And look, I'm not saying he's a saint out there. He's not like Mr. Rogers to the referees. But, compared to JB, who has said some unredeemable stuff to these referees. Like, Kenny's not going to that place. And still the Cavs can't get calls. And if you especially look at, like, how Kenny used to act last year for most of the season to how he acts this year, he's definitely reacting to, like, months of horrific foul calls for the Cavaliers that only seem to exist for the Cavaliers. And at this point, you do got to start asking questions about this. Like, there's too much evidence that the Cavs aren't getting the same treatment other teams get to ignore at this point, right? Like, you can't just throw it away. Like, this is happening. This has happened for a while with the Cavaliers. And you have to ask yourself, is this why the Cavs deal with so many injuries? You know what I mean? Like, is this why we thought Darius Garland was injury prone? Because he plays on the one team in the NBA where referees let you play fucking football in the paint with them? It's always funny to me because this Cavs team, because they're undersized and for the most part, underweight. They can't rebound. And because they can't rebound, everybody calls this team soft. I don't think that's a fair way of putting it. I've seen this Cavs core play through injuries. I've seen this Cavs core play through incredible physicality in basketball games. They're not soft. They just aren't a big team, a physically imposing team. So they can't impose their will as much as some fans would want them to. And I especially think the accusations of them being soft is hilarious to me, because if you watch this team on a day in, day out basis, no team absorbs more physicality on a regular basis than the Cleveland Cavaliers. Go look at how Donovan Mitchell hits the floor so many times in these games, how Evan Mobley hits the floor, how guys are routinely hitting the floor for the Cavaliers and no fouls ever being called. Like, look at what they get away with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. There are so many times where they just get the shit punched out of them and nobody calls anything. And then you line that up with like, oh, well, Evan does get hurt. Our smaller guys that go to the paint, they get hurt more often. Why? Because they're allowed to get tackled. James Harden, who has two things going for him at this point of his career, right? And again, he's older, so shit's going to happen. I understand that. But James Harden has gotten to the free throw line recently as much as anybody. And James Harden recently has played more basketball than anybody. And 2 weeks into his Cavs career, well, not 2 weeks, but 6 games into his Cavs career, and he's getting to the free throw line less than he's ever gotten. And he's getting an injury because refs aren't calling fouls. These problems only exist for the Cavaliers. This is part of the handicap that the Cavaliers are playing with, and at some point we got to say it's ridiculous. At some point it has to be addressed. At some point we got to just start getting calls that normal teams get. Like, I've heard all the excuses, we're not physical enough, we're not tough enough, that's why we don't. This is bullshit. This is just straight up bullshit. It's all bullshit. You know what I mean? The Cavs deal with more physicality than anybody. They deal with the consequences of that physicality more than anybody. And yet they are still a team that loves to go into the paint, loves to get their buckets in the paint, knowing that they're not going to get any fucking foul calls. Like, pound for pound, they're probably one of the tougher teams in the league. But if I say that, there's going to be a section of the fan base that lose their fucking mind because they're so invested in the narrative that they're soft, when the narrative really should be about the foul calls that they don't get, that everybody else gets. And James Harden is a perfect catalyst to have that conversation through. That's really my thing. And look, I'm not a complaint about the refs guy. You've watched me on multiple videos where all fans want to do is complain about the referee. And I'm just sitting here like, we could have made some shots. We could have made some free throws down the stretch. We could have got some rebounds. We can't leave it up to the referee. And look, despite that, the Cavs have been playing excellent basketball. Despite not getting the calls, the Cavs have been winning games. So they've been doing their part. You know what I mean? They're not getting any calls. The three-point shots especially egregious, right? How many times have you seen a defender just violate the landing space of a three-point shooter on the Cavs, whether it be Donovan Mitchell or James Harden, since he's gotten here, and no foul call gets called? I mean, it was an obvious one that they missed, a 4-point play that they missed in the Denver game. The problem that the Cavs have to deal with is that they aren't being officiated fairly. Like, for whatever reason, they aren't getting officiated fairly. And I think that should be evaluated, because we know that James Harden goes to the free throw line. We know that James Harden does not get injured very often. So if those two things are happening to James Harden, maybe we should think about what's really going on here. You know what I mean? It'd be fascinating to watch Darius Garland's career, because now that he doesn't play for the Cavs, does he get the whistle now? Like, if Darius Garland starts leading the league in free throw attempts, you know something's up. But that's what's going on with the Cavs. That's my thoughts on it. Hopefully James Harden gets healthy soon, because we need him. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.